The internet became a thing when I was in high school. I quickly got sucked into chat rooms, and it was innocent curiosity, but found myself engaging in inappropriate conversations with people I didn't know. And if I could do that, and I thought I was a pretty good person, pretty good girl, I knew that was definitely something that could bombard my kids. We just want you to know what to do when you see something, because it's not if you see it, it's when you see it.
Like, how do you encourage your kids to want this for themselves? That's an important aspect, right?
Sure. The average first exposure to pornography is around 11 years old, with some as young as 8.
Okay, so what's the response? Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the MJAA Young Professionals podcast. I'm your host for today, Miranda Weinberg. I'm joined today by Dr. Stephanie Caracelo. Stephanie, thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's such an honor to have you. We're going to be talking about protecting children from seeing things online that can be traumatic. And before we dive into that, it's such a very serious topic. I thought that we would give those listening just a little bit of background about who you are and where you're coming from on this topic.
Sure. So I'm a fourth-generation Messianic Jew. My family has been pretty integrated into the Messianic movement my entire life. And I am an educator by trade. I teach elementary school, and I'm in leadership with my husband and our congregation, and I'm also the bar and bat mitzvah director in our congregation. For years, I worked with Dara Vidito and Rabbi Kevin Solomon within the MJAA. So I've been working with young people for a lot of my life, and it's really been a privilege. When I think about this topic and protecting young eyes and protecting kids, as a mom, I feel like it's part of my mandate to disciple and train my kids. And in a world where we are just bombarded, especially our kids, but us too, with the digital dangers, I have just found it a passion within me to explore this topic.
Wow, that's amazing. How old are your kids, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, no, I have a 16-year-old and I have an almost 13-year-old. So a teen and a preteen.
Okay. So let's dive straight in. I mean, we live in a world where it's digital everything. iPads, iPhones, YouTube. Starting from, mine are 2 and 4. They already know how to work my phone. They already know how to click the YouTube button. So what started you on your journey of getting into this topic?
So my first exposure to anything online, especially communicating, was in the world of dial-up. The internet became a thing when I was in high school. And with AOL, I don't know if you were around during that time, but the sound of dial-up is still ingrained in my brain. But I quickly got sucked into chat rooms, and just it was innocent curiosity, but found myself engaging in inappropriate conversations with people I didn't know. And if I could do that, and I thought I was a pretty good person, pretty good girl, I knew that that was definitely something that could bombard my kids. Because of my own exposure to some inappropriate content, I knew that first I had to repent from it and really seek the Lord. But also in working with the YMJA, that was like the number one prayer request was for dealing with pornography or unclean thoughts. And it's just something that just impacts us as humans. And so as a mom, I just knew that that was something I needed to be on top of with my kids. So I began researching. I'm a researcher in general. Like I just really thrive in that environment. So when I read even statistics that can be shocking, I also have compassion. You know, that these are innocent children that are being exposed to things that most of them don't really want to be exposed to, but once they come upon it, it can be addictive.
Can you, not to put you on the spot, but can you share some of the statistics that you're talking about?
Yeah. So, and I have some of them too, because I don't want to misquote them. But for example, like pornography and explicit content, according to Barna and Covenant Eyes, 71% of teens say that they have intentionally or accidentally encountered online pornography. That's a pretty large percentage. And the average first exposure to pornography is around 11 years old, with some as young as 8. And but that's just one area. Social media is huge. My 16-year-old just got Instagram, and I can talk a little bit more about that process a little bit later in our conversation. But teen girls who spend over 3 hours a day on social media are 60% have a 60% higher risk for developing mental health issues like depression and anxiety.
Wow.
And that was in the CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey. That was a much more recent survey. But even like on a spiritual level, the average teen spends about 7 times more hours consuming entertainment media than they do in spiritual formation or in faith-based conversations. And that is terrifying to me. I mean, I know adults that scroll constantly, and if it's an issue for adults, it's definitely going to be an issue, for our kids. Their exposure to things like dark topics, and they get desensitized to a lot, even things like so this is interesting. So 58% of Christian teens or believing teens say that they get their moral and worldview guidance primarily from YouTube, TikTok, or Instagram, not from their parents and not from their congregation. So they're alarming statistics, and they should make us respond for sure.
Okay, so what's the response?
So with that, we have to put some parameters in place. In our house, we have a number of rules, including things like there's no devices behind closed doors. Everything is out in the open. However, I will say, when I was a teenager and I was engaging in those conversations, we had one computer and it was in our living room. But my parents weren't holding me accountable. And I'm not blaming them, but that just was an area they didn't know about. So we have a lot of conversations about even just my own personal concerns. Conversation is huge. There is nothing that no filter, no app that can be more important than a conversation with your kids, because you're really their first line of defense. When it comes to things like screen time limits, I mean, there are things that you can, like even on Instagram, you can have screen time limits.
Yeah.
But there has to be accountability with all of that. Trying to think. One of the things that we just did when my daughter got Instagram is we created a tech covenant. So we have specific parameters. We have check-ins.
A tech covenant.
Yes.
Okay, so like rules on pen and paper kind of thing.
So, and actually she came up with it. I had shared with her some of the things that because she had been asking for it. I had shared some of our concerns with her, and my husband did as well. And so I said, we just have to have, rules in place. And so I shared with her some of the ones I had come up with or had come across, and she decided to put it all in writing. And she said, okay, so how do you feel about this? We looked at it and we were just so impressed by her maturity and by her desire to want to do it well, because it's not really just, telling them what to be afraid of. It's really giving them a worldview that we need to view this like we do anything else in our culture. It needs to be in moderation. It needs to, who you follow, who you hang out with, can rub off on you. And so all of the things that we have been talking about, she put into that covenant, and we just were really, really impressed by it.
Wow. Can you share some of the rules that you guys came up with?
Sure. So one of the things that I do, and I've done this before, even before Instagram, but we do tech checks. So my kids know that their devices are not really theirs, they're ours, and we give them the privilege of being able to use them. So it actually, and it's not out of, it's not like a control thing, it's a safety thing. And that's really the way that we spin it for them. But we do believe that too. It's not just, the words. But so we have a lot of tech checks. There's, but again, everything is out in the open. But also the people in our circles also know that we have rules. And so when our kids' friends come over, if they have phones and they are not a specialized phone, which I can talk about those in a little bit, then their phones don't go upstairs in our bedroom either. And I can't tell you the number of times I've had my daughter's friends look at me, oh, phone stay down here if you're running upstairs. And they're like, what? Why? I'm like, we don't do internet in bedrooms. So those are just some of the parameters that we've put in place.
Wow. And Your kids are, I mean, they're teens now. So what has been their reaction to that?
Because that's been the way it's been from the start, there hasn't really been a fight about any of it. They haven't contested it. There have been a few times when, like I've been upstairs and, for example, and I'll hear my daughter on the phone and I'll go down, I'll knock on her door and I'm like, is your phone up here? Oh, I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to have this phone call, but I also wanted to do this at the same time. And I'm like, well, then leave the door open. And as soon as you're off the phone, bring the phone back downstairs. So it's just accountability, has been helpful, but because they know that's an expectation, they've been pretty compliant. So
are there other tools that you guys put in place? I know you mentioned screen time. My husband and I, we have that on our own phones because just, sometimes you can lose track of time. So it's helpful for it to come up and say, all done.
Yes.
But what are some other, I know there's like apps and things that people can use.
There are. So I follow an organization called Protect Young Eyes pretty faithfully. They also have like a website called Defending Young Minds, and they are a faith-based organization, but they walk you through how to set up parameters on any type of device. So prior to having an iPhone, I was an Android user, and I felt very comfortable with that. And when we migrated to iPhones, I felt like I was just in a world that I just didn't know and didn't know how to use. And so they literally publish guides for parents. It's an opportunity to equip parents so that they can effectively disciple and guide their kids. So there are things like, and they walk you through even, we think about putting controls on devices, but it's more than just the devices. You can also set parameters even on like your home routers, so that anybody that comes into your house, anybody that uses your Wi-Fi, you can have those same boundaries for anybody that comes. So it's pretty awesome. Some people install things like Covenant Eyes. They'll put that on their, even on their TVs and their computers as well. So there really are a lot of safeguards, and you have to know, you have to do your research about it and know what's best for your family. But I'd much rather have too much and then slowly back it out than just be oblivious to potential harm. And it's really not any different than locking your doors at night or, locking your car when you go in the parking lot. You want to protect your kids. You would never intentionally put them in a dangerous situation, I would hope. And just say, oh, I hope you figure it out and navigate it well. We want to just put these, some guidance up there for them.
And why, what would you say to encourage parents of why this is so important? And maybe not even just parents, but like even for ourselves.
So I don't know a single person that doesn't benefit from accountability. In our sinful nature and just who we are, our flesh sometimes, is fighting against our spirit. And I shouldn't say sometimes, it is. And so we just have to be vigilant, because it's not just protecting them for now. This is like protecting their identity in Messiah. And all it takes is just a little wedge for Satan to come in and to get into their mind or to develop some sort of addiction. And it can take years for people to recover from situations. In fact, the person that started the Protect Young Eyes organization, he had accidental exposure to porn as a kid, and talks a lot about his journey through restoration. And, there's so much shame associated with that. And we want people to overcome it so that they can serve the Lord and really be who they are supposed to be in Messiah.
Yeah, and it's so true what you said about locking the doors. I mean, this is something that is a safety issue, but we don't see it as the danger that it could be. And I think that when people hear this, they might think, oh, wow, this is like, it could even be considered extreme, but you wouldn't let your kid, like you said, open the front door and walk out into the street unprotected.
Right.
So what are some of the things that you can, like, do you have like conversation tips to starting this conversation with your kids, if you never have had those conversations before? I know your kids have grown up with it, so it wasn't like a shock, but maybe for a parent of a teenager that suddenly puts all these rules in place, I can imagine that would be difficult. What advice would you give?
Sure. So I think we have to normalize conversation in general with our kids. There's so many opportunities for us to just sit and talk. And the conversations about our own concerns, even about technology, should be just as normal as talking about health and friendship and school. They should just be part of our everyday conversation. So for people, I'll say right now with younger kids, start the conversations early. When my kids were little, we talked about like red light people and green light people. It's the same idea, same mentality. These are, red light situations or green light situations, or, as they get older.
For someone that's never heard that, can you explain that a little bit?
So a red light person or a red light situation would be like a stranger, someone you don't know, someone that you're maybe not comfortable with. That would be someone that you might not talk to or tell your name in a grocery store or anything like that, where a green light person would be like a trusted adult. So I think like when my kids were little, that was the lingo that made sense when they were younger.
Okay.
But I would say now, for someone who has older kids, or if conversation is not normal, start making it normal. Things like phones and devices can be major distractions. And even sitting at the dining room table, that's something that our family does. We have dinner together. I should say every night, but some nights it just doesn't work. But we do. We sit down and we talk, and we have rules like no devices at the table. So because conversation should be normal, that's really when you can hear the hearts of your kids, and when they can hear your heart as well. So I would say if you're starting with a teenager now and you're about to just completely rock their world, put some protections in. I think the most important part is just to share your heart with them, be open. I don't think we have to hide the dangers from our kids. They're going to learn about them eventually. I don't think they have to know every single detail that exists. But in a world where their identities are truly under attack, like you can come at that from that angle with your kids. They know what's in the world. They know a whole lot more. They're exposed to a whole lot more than we think that they are. They take things in. Kids are smart. And we really just want to equip them. So if you're coming at it from an angle of, I want to equip you, I want to help guide you so that you can be the best person that you are to be in Messiah, then let me help you as your parent to establish some guidelines. And I need you to trust me. And I want you to trust me. And they're not easy conversations if you're not used to having them. But the more that you do it, the easier it will be, because ultimately we want our kids to really know who they are in the Lord and be strong in who they are. We want them to defend their faith. I mean, even especially being Messianic, it's so hard in a world, even in just the believing world. It's so easy to compare yourself to others, and I know that's a huge thing for teenagers. Yeah. So I really I pray that as we continue to guide our kids, that they're going to be able to even strengthen their resolve for who they are as Messianic Jews and Messianic Gentiles, even in a world where they say, well, being Christian is good. Why do you have to be Jewish? Yeah,
that's so good. So you shared that your daughter is 16. She's now getting Instagram. Is that the age that you would recommend, or how did you guys? I know you said that she presented it herself. Did you have that conversation before? Was it like when you turned 16?
So at about 14 and a half or 15, she said, when would I be allowed to have social media? And we always just said, there's not a magic age, but she kept pressing and pressing and pressing. And so we said, maybe when you're 16, but in her mind, she said, oh, when I turn 16, I'm going to, be able to get Instagram. And so when she turned 16, that was like, I could just tell it was like in her mind, like, I really want to ask, but you haven't said anything yet, so I don't know if I should approach it. And then about a month later, she said, so have you thought any more about it? Have you prayed any more about it? And I said, I have. And I said, the time is coming soon, but you just need to give Dad and I a few more weeks for us to talk through some of our concerns. And honestly, I needed to do a little bit more research of what I could do as a parent to help monitor her the best that I could. But in the digital world, a lot of experts say that 16 is a good age to start, but I don't think there's a magic age. I also am of the mindset that delay is the way. We should be delaying it as long as possible. We don't want them to be so hungry for it, that they resent us or anything like that.
Yeah.
But, that prefrontal cortex is not fully developed and doesn't fully reach maturity until they're about 25. So things like planning and impulse control and all of those things that you need in order to effectively manage social media, they don't have it at 16. So again, there's not really a magic age, but I definitely wouldn't say before that.
Are there certain social media like apps that you would say not at all? Like you'll never be allowed to use this?
So I personally I only use like Facebook and Instagram. So that's what I'm most comfortable with because I feel like I have used it enough to be able to know the ins and outs. But there are many others that I know, like my kids' friends are on, and they run into the same dangers on Snapchat and even on WhatsApp that they would anywhere else. So we've told my daughter, at least for now, it is Instagram, and she seems content with it. So because I don't have a lot of exposure to others, we just haven't explored it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's, I guess, for the teenage spectrum. On the teenage spectrum, what about on, like, for example, just myself? Like mine are 2 and 4. So what would you say to like parents of young littles?
Sure. So, well, can I tell you a story really quickly? Because this will be helpful, I think. So, my 12-year-old, he is really into like fitness and healthy eating and things like that. So we have YouTube on our TV downstairs, and we have like there's like automatically a guest account, and if you don't know that, like there's always a guest account that's there, and then there's just whatever account other accounts you have logged in, and usually he logs in under his account, but he can't view reels or shorts on YouTube. So sometimes he'll go on the guest account, and usually he asks. And he was watching a bunch of fitness videos, and all of a sudden, like ads started coming up, and he was bombarded with information. And to which he came to us, and he was like, I think I should. And it wasn't anything bad. He's like, I think I should start taking creatine. And it was just okay. Conversations like that. But because he watched it, then the algorithms then assume that he is interested in other things about his body. And so he started being fed different things in the algorithm. But I also noticed within him that he was like anxious about watching these videos. He was, once summer started, our like routine kind of goes out the window a little bit. And I noticed that he would wake up and immediately first thing he wanted to do was come downstairs and just watch these reels and these shorts. And in preparation for a different thing that I was doing, was reading about it. And I was like, oh my goodness, like these are the warning signs, he is being bombarded with information unintentionally. He had really good intentions. And so I went to him and I said, Josiah, I really think that the things that you are being fed right now I'm seeing some anxiety, some anxiousness in you, and a desire to feel like you just have to watch this and listen to it. He goes, I feel that way too.
Wow.
And I said, I think we need to just stop. We don't need to be on that guest account anymore. We don't need to watching those reels. And he said, I agree. And one of the things I read, and I don't have the exact statistic, but it was talking about the reaction in our kids, and getting that high was similar to like a cocaine high. And it's releasing the same hormones in their body, and we just have to be aware. So I say all that, even though he's a little bit older, but with younger kids, we can't assume that their devices are not going to have ads. Unless you are paying for an ad-free version of something, you have to you have to be present with your kids. Devices should not be used as babysitters. They shouldn't be, hey, watch this so I can do this, which I know is hard. I mean, I'm a working mom. I get it. And we've had plenty of opportunities where my kids have been playing a game and, there's like an ad for something and they're like, what's this? And I was like, I don't know, don't look at it. But really, we want our kids to be able to come to us, when they see things. But screen time limits are important. But we also need to remember that our kids need to be out in nature. We need to help them find the beauty of God's creation. We want them to be reading the Word. They're not going to want to read the Word if they're getting all of their excitement from games and devices. And not to say there aren't good, godly things on, on our devices, because there is. But we just have to be mindful of screen time limits. Some professionals say that they should have, no more than 2 hours a day on screens. It's funny, when I take my kids to the pediatrician every year for their checkups, that's always one of the questions that's on the parental checklist. Do you have any concerns about screen time? And in my own pride, I usually say no, but I do. I do have concerns about it. And those are, they're just genuine concerns that I have. So making sure that they can't get access to things. We don't ever want our kids to have uninhibited internet use. Definitely not, YouTube or anything like that. Just because, again, there's good, but we know how Satan works. Anything that can be used for good can also be used to harm. And so I would say for somebody with young kids, have everything out in the open, and pay attention and have accountability. Check when they get a little bit older. You should be checking device history, browsing history. If you go in and you see that they have deleted something or deleted everything, or there is no browsing history and they've been on it for an hour, it's a red flag. And we need to just really keep up with what our kids are doing.
Wow. It sounds like all amazing. I think that the hardest part probably, or at least I'm imagining, is getting your kids on board.
Yeah.
And making sure that they're not trying to figure out ways around it. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to encourage, how do you encourage your kids to want this for themselves? Because I know that's an important aspect, right?
Sure. So we want our kids to desire holiness, right? We want them to desire the things of the Lord. And so I think by modeling things ourselves, our kids watch us. And if we are just constantly on our phones, and then they're going to also have that desire as well. But if we have a mandate as parents, it's given to us in the Vea Hafta, to talk about the Lord when we're, walking along the ways, when we're at home, when we're lying down, when we're getting up, but also to train our children in the way that they should go so that when they are old, they do not depart from it. So we have all of these mandates, and to really abide with our kids, to spend time together. And if we can enjoy each other's time without devices, we're establishing a safe place for our kids to have conversation. And I think it really opens up opportunities to talk about the Lord. I have a really good friend who started this journey a little bit later in life. Her kids were maybe middle to upper elementary school. So maybe I think 7 and 8 years old. And one of the things that she figured out quickly is that because she started having and normalizing conversations later, the best way to have conversations was when they were in the car and no one was looking at each other. She would be driving down the road and they would be in the back seat and nobody had to look at each other, but they could have normal conversation. And it took that for them all to be comfortable. And then that's where she really felt like she could share her heart. But if we're really supposed to point our children towards Yeshua, because that's our responsibility as parents, then we have to model it. And that means putting all of these things in place for ourselves. Boys and men are the most statistics about pornography and content is mostly geared towards them, but women deal with it too. And but there's other things, consumerism or comparison. There's so many issues, and we just want to delay as much of that from reaching our kids as possible.
We talked a little bit about you mentioned that you saw the warning signs in your child, but could you list, for those of us that don't know, like what are some of the warning signs
Yes.
that your kids are either getting too much screen time or seeing something they shouldn't?
Yes. So some of the things like we mentioned, like pornography and inappropriate content, that's usually a big one, or sexually explicit content. Another one would be like cyberbullying and online harassment. You might not know that your kids are experiencing that, but some of the danger signs look like if all of a sudden they're acting excluded or intentionally excluding other people because they now it's been modeled for them online. If all of a sudden they are taking on, in the name of authenticity or individuality, they're all of a sudden feeling like they need their own identity. They just need to be different than they were before. And they should be noticeable if we're paying attention to our kids. Some other concerns could be things like, this is a big one. So like violence and gore. Violence is and the desensitization to darkness creeps in really well. I've seen this a lot in students that I teach. I work in a public school, and so a lot of the families that I interact with, they're not believers, and I see a lot in them. So they're like drawn to. I mean, even anime has a lot of dark aspects to it, but things that would be maybe they might think is humorous, but if you're listening to your kids, you're thinking, oh my goodness, that's not even funny, Violent clips are often disguised as humor, but even forms of like self-harm, that's really huge. It's been an issue for a long time, but there's some of the social media concerns, like it glamorizes depression, or like thinspo, for example. Like that is a huge one as well, where girls are just constantly, like what makes me look, the best, or what do I need to wear so that, so I'm looking the thinnest, or things like sad aesthetics. That's like a really big thing too. One of the things that I think is just crazy, if you have paid attention to any of the TikTok challenges, that have been on there.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are just like, you would think like with your, like we're grown women, so we know that, that it's stupid, but, trying to asphyxiate yourself, before, so you can pass out, or eating Tide Pods. I don't know who thought that was like a good idea. And some things are really completely harmless. They're like the ice challenges and all of those things. But what I've learned is that there are some influencers who will start with things like that, gain a following, and slowly build more dangerous kinds of challenges. I read about one where it was like, how many challenges can you do in 24 hours? And the one who reports back with the most wins some kind of arbitrary prize. So paying attention to a change in your kids' behavior, which that's what all of these are.
Yeah.
And just being aware. Like we should be having conversations about all things, and godly things as well. And if we want our kids to develop discernment. And so if we are discerning ourselves and we are praying for wisdom, the Lord says, if you ask for it, I will give it, then we need to be paying attention for any kind of change in our kids.
That's so good. Do you think that the congregation should play a role in this, if any?
I do. So I think having workshops for parents, you don't know what you don't know until somebody tells you, So I think it's out of my own shame that I have, explored some of this, just because I knew that I engaged in conversations I shouldn't have had as a teenager. But I think that we need to approach it as a community, because it's not like, and yes, it is my responsibility as a parent to direct my kids, but we get to do this together. We get to do this with our community. So I think we should be equipping parents. Some of the organizations I follow offer, you could have speakers. You could be youth leaders for sure. Keeping up with the different, just the different trends and knowing the statistics.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them, applies to our believing community. And so I definitely think that we should. A lot of the stuff is in scripture. Like if you've read the Torah, like there's so many of these topics that are in there. Mm-hmm. And while, Proverbs doesn't specifically mention Instagram, the principles that are in there apply, and so it's really important that we as a community stand together, and encourage each other. Like the adults in my kids' sphere of influence, or who influence over them, they know we have rules, and they've been very respectful of them. We have another rule that says, if you see something that makes you uncomfortable or like pornography, close the lid and tell an adult. You're not in trouble. We just want you to know what to do when you see something, because it's not if you see it, it's when you see it. Everybody is going to be exposed at some point. And so we want our kids to know what to do and how to react. It's the same thing with like a fire drill. If we never practice it, they're never going to know what to do when the alarm goes off. So it's all connected.
Okay. And you said, just to reiterate that, you said that your rule for the kids is if they see something, to close the lid and to come and talk to you about it.
Yep. Or any adult that they're with. We have even made decisions, because I know there are some people who, friends from my kids' school, who don't necessarily have the same rules that we do. We've avoided sleepovers and things before, because I have absolutely no idea what somebody else's rules are. And I did have one difficult conversation with a parent once where I said, oh, yes, my daughter can spend the night, but I just want to be, clear. What are your rules, for internet safety at home? And she got really upset with me. And she was like, they're just going to be watching a movie, but it's I wanted to know. And to me, it was the same thing, I'm not going to put my kids in a dangerous situation.
Yeah.
And while I probably caught a little bit of flack from that, from my daughter, eventually more recently, she came back to me and said, Mom, they're down a wrong path right now. And I'm really glad that I wasn't involved with that earlier, because it would have been harder for me to pull myself away. So we just sometimes have to make decisions that are hard for our kids. But ultimately, we have to be kingdom focused.
Yeah. Yeah. This is so good. All of this, even just for me as a mom, I'm like, okay, this is a lot of to-do lists that I'm making mental checklists right now. What's an encouragement that you would say to parents that maybe feel like it's overwhelming and it's just it's too big of a pervasive issue and don't even know where to start?
Sure. Well, I would say, first of all, just remind yourself of the scriptural mandates that we have as parents. Give yourself a little bit of grace. It's okay. We're all going to make mistakes. I am not perfect. And there have been plenty of times when I have treated it as a babysitter, so my kids could, so that I could get, something done. But really, one of the most important things that we can do is just to start. You have to start by either establishing something simple, we're going to set screen time limits, because we really it's just better for us. And instead of being on devices for however long, instead we're going to play a game together as a family, and let's just spend time together. So that could be one thing. You could also start as simple as having a digital Shabbat. I know a family that does that. They just don't do devices on Shabbat. So that's a really practical way. But just to encourage parents, lean on each other. If you don't know, ask somebody to help you, and ask for prayer. There are so many awesome organizations that are out there. And if you want, I can share those just with our audience so that they'll know. Yeah. All right. So the first one is called Protect Young Eyes. And they have I think I mentioned it before, but a co-website called Defending Young Minds. They have so many wonderful resources. A lot of them are free. You can pay for more, but I would say most of what I've used has been their free content. Axis.org, AXIS. They're awesome. They have resources for youth leaders and for parents, and they provide like they have something called a culture translator. So our kids are a different generation than us, and they speak a different language. Even little things like acronyms in texting, if you don't know what they are, you can literally go on and look up, they have like a dictionary for
parents. I need that for
myself. Even like this, like more recently, like someone I know posted like a song on Instagram, and there was a whole acronym that was not appropriate. And I was just like, hey, did you know that was there? She was like, oh my goodness, how do you even know what that is? And I was like, oh, access, but the culture translator is really awesome. And the third greatest resource I use is Focus on the Family. They have something that it's called Ages and Stages, and you can sign up for it. And every month they will send you anything from talking points to having conversations, understanding what your kids are going through developmentally, so scientifically, but also with a spiritual component.
Yeah.
And they also, every year on your kid's birthday in that month, they send you kind of like, hey, this is what you're going to most likely expect this year. And so, like when they say, you're going to notice mood swings in your teenagers, and it's like, oh, great. But then when it comes, you're like, oh yeah, they did say that was going to happen, so those resources are really great. We just have to equip ourselves and a lot of prayer, and we just have to give ourselves some grace.
That's so good. Well, I just really want to thank you so much for your time. This has all been so enlightening, and I have a lot myself that I want to talk to my husband now and get started. I know we're early in the journey, but I think that a lot of families are going to be really encouraged. Is there anything that I missed? Anything that you wanted to add?
I think if I just had to say one thing at the end, it is really possible to be pro-tech and protect your kids at the same time. Like, I think that's important. They can live in the same space. And just like we're constantly figuring out and balancing everything in life, especially like as busy moms, you can do both. And so we just have to find the right rhythm for ourselves and for our families.
So good. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And everyone that tuned in, we just want to thank you as well. And if you liked the resources, we'll try to link them in our bio. And we hope that you enjoyed it. Share it with your friends and other parents that you think need to hear it. And we hope that you subscribe to hear more amazing content like this.